So when I was 18, I got my first jury summons. I mean, I must have been only eligible to be on a jury for a couple days before they sent me this summons. So I went down to the courthouse in Newport Beach and I ended up getting selected for a jury. Now at the time I think it was over the summer, I was working at a grocery store, Trader Joe's, and it was exciting to me to take a couple days off of my regular work and go sit on this jury and get to experience. I was interested in the legal system. I wanted to know what would it really be like to be in a court case. But I noticed that the case I was on was a guy who was being accused of resisting and delaying a police officer. So it wasn't like the crime of the century, but I noticed that even for this more minor crime, it wasn't as dramatic as maybe I would have thought based on what I'd seen in TV shows, movies. If you watch a courtroom drama, there's always some twist. Like the last possible second, they find a piece of evidence that proves that the suspect really did it or didn't do it, and it's brought in at the last second, on the last day of the trial, or all of a sudden there's a witness who actually saw the whole murder take place that nobody knew about, but it's brought in, and somebody presents a piece of evidence, and the other side, that the prosecution or the defense, is shocked. Oh my gosh, where did this evidence come from? But in reality, this would almost never happen in an actual court case. And this is because the evidence that's involved in a court case is decided well before it ever even goes before a jury. They will have a hearing in real life as the suspect of a crime. If you're accused of committing a crime, you have the right to see the evidence that's against you. And so the prosecution has to provide all the evidence they've got against the suspect well before, so they can see, hey, what am I really up against? Is this even worth trying to fight? Should I plead guilty to this? And they'll actually hold a court hearing before the jury is ever involved. There's no jury present. It's just the defense, the prosecution, and the judge, and they will decide what pieces of evidence are even going to be allowed in trial. The defense will argue, well, certain pieces of evidence that maybe the prosecution thinks are against my client, they shouldn't even be involved in this. They were obtained illegally, or they don't really mean what the prosecution thinks that they mean. So they shouldn't even be included. And the prosecutor will typically want all the evidence included because they're trying to convict. Whatever the motivations are of both sides, ultimately, the judge and everybody involved is going to agree or come to some type of understanding about what evidence is going to be allowed in trial. So it's all decided ahead of time. So by the time that the jury is present, the defense and the prosecutor, they all agree on what evidence is in play, and now the only disagreement is the conclusion. The prosecutor will present the evidence to say, I think based on all this, it's clear that the suspect did it. And the defense attorney will say, use the same pieces of evidence. Hey, based on all these evidence, I don't think there's enough evidence here to say that my client actually did it. I think you need to render a verdict not guilty. I think that there's actually a certain strategy that we can take from this experience. I think as a Christian making an apologetic argument, I'm trying to convince somebody else that they should agree with what I believe. I think there's actually some learning lessons we can take from this whole strategy of agreeing to the evidence and then making an argument. The reason the defense and the prosecutor have to agree on the evidence ahead of time is so that once the case is in front of a jury, we can have a lean, mean case where we're just going to be talking about the guilt or not non-guilt of the suspect. And it should go pretty smoothly because there shouldn't be too many arguments about small matters of the law. Is it really okay for this piece of evidence to come in, and now we're making these very technical legal arguments in front of a jury that may or may not really understand, and maybe the jury has to leave, and it causes all kinds of problems. We're getting sidetracked constantly from the main focus, which is this guy guilty or not? Now, in a court case, maybe there's still going to be some objections, there's still some arguments, but hopefully, since we've agreed on what the evidence is beforehand, it should run smoothly. And I think that we could actually take this into our conversations with our non-believing friends. If we're going to have a conversation about, for example, Jesus. Did Jesus live and die in real history? As Christians, as a Christian, I believe that the Bible is an authoritative, reliable Word of God. So one of the reasons I believe Jesus lived and died is that the Bible teaches that. I would point to the Bible as one of many reasons that I believe Jesus really lived, really died of crucifixion, really rose again. But not all my friends believe that the Bible is reliable. Many would believe that it is not. I'm talking about my non-believing friends here, okay? So if I'm trying to have a conversation with someone about, did Jesus really live and die? If I point to the Bible and say, well, yeah, this is the reason you should believe that Jesus really lived. Read the Bible. It says it right there. They're not going to accept that. So now, if I'm trying to have a conversation about the resurrection, now we've run into this roadblock. I've said, hey, just look at the Bible. And they're saying, you can't trust the Bible. And now we're going to divert the conversation into now I've got to make an argument why you should trust the Bible. Now, I think there's great reasons we should trust the Bible. I think that you can make a very compelling argument. But it's now sidetracked me. My goal was to talk about Jesus dying, the resurrection, and now I'm getting sidetracked into this other conversation about the reliability of the Bible. And while it might be a fruitful thing, it's something that I want my friend to accept, it's distracting me from the big thing that I really wanted to talk about, which is the resurrection. So sometimes it may not be worth our while or strategic for that particular conversation to discuss the reliability of the Bible because it distracts from what I'm trying to get at. And I may not need the Bible to make the case. See, I would say that the majority of people probably already hold views about Jesus that are going to help us to make the case for the resurrection without reference to the Bible. Most people believe that Jesus lived, that he died, and that his followers started saying right after this event, started saying that they'd seen him alive again, and they were even persecuted. Some of these people got killed or punished for their beliefs about Jesus coming back from the dead, but they never recanted. Now, a lot of people already believe those things. So if my friend already believes that, based on secular history, not based on the Bible, based on other things in history, well, then great, we already have common ground, and maybe we can start talking about, well, why would the disciples, even under persecution, not recant their statement? It seems like they really believed that. If they really believed it, is it possible that Jesus really rose from the dead? And if they don't already believe that, they're not sure what they think about Jesus. Did he really live or die? Well, we could actually point them to a lot of secular scholarship. The majority of secular scholars, of experts, even if they're not Christians, would agree that Jesus was a guy who lived and that his disciples really believed that he had been killed and came back from the dead. So we could point somebody who's doesn't have an opinion, hey, I'm not sure what I think about Jesus, to a lot of the majority of scholarship and say, well, there's a lot of good reasons outside the Bible, outside belief in the Bible, to believe that Jesus really lived and died and his followers believed he came back from the dead. So a lot of the people that we talk to might already hold beliefs or be open to beliefs about Jesus without reference to the Bible. So if we can help them to come to these conclusions without talking about the Bible, it just sort of saves us the time, or it keeps us from getting distracted by an argument for the reliability of the Bible. Another day, we might want to have a conversation about the reliability of the Bible. But if we're trying to, today, I got 20 minutes to sit at coffee and talk to somebody about Jesus, maybe I want to stay focused on that one case for the resurrection. It's not to say that we're rejecting reliability of the Bible, to say that let's focus on this one area. But if we already have some things in common with the people we're talking to, then there might be some strength, some strategic advantage to staying in the areas we already agree on. Just like in the court case where the defense and the prosecutor have some pieces of evidence they agree on. Okay, these are the things that are going to come into play in this court case. If there's things we already have in common with this non-believing friend, let's see what we can do. Can we work with just the common beliefs so we don't even have to make an argument about should we admit a new piece of evidence or exclude something? Let's just stick with what we both agree on. Let's see how far that gets us. Now, this can be tough because we don't always know the beliefs that another person holds, and we don't want to make assumptions about what someone else thinks. But if we ask some questions, we get to know someone, even in a 5 to 10 minute conversation, we could probably get to the heart of what do they think about Jesus. And if they think about things about Jesus like that we would agree with, that, hey, he lived, he died, his followers truly and fervently believed that they'd seen him rise from the dead, well, now we have some common ground that we can start with. And if we don't share the common ground, then that's fine. We can approach this from another way. But in the cases where there is already common ground, it might be worthwhile to just stick with what we already agree on instead of trying to introduce even more evidence. Sometimes just minimal information, even a few facts, can point to the truth of the resurrection. Obviously, if we accept the reliability of the Bible, now we have an even stronger case that Jesus lived and died and rose again. But if we don't accept that, it might not be necessary to get that conversation started and start pointing somebody to the truth of Christianity based on all the beliefs that they already hold, or beliefs that they might be willing to accept, like from secular scholarship. They might feel suspicious of the Bible, but maybe they're willing to hear what a historian has to say about Jesus. So let's think about it as we're having our apologetic approach. Let's just consider, what are the beliefs that the people that I'm talking to already hold, and are those beliefs alone enough to get started on this conversation about the truth of Jesus?